The man came into our hospital on February 26, 1991. The official reports say there were no Canadian casualties in the Gulf War, but the closest we got was that day. I will never forget it. I was posted to the 1st Canadian Field Hospital in Al-Qaisama as a medical assistant. A lot of our incoming casualties were Iraqi soldiers, and we treated them as much as we did the coalition forces. Some of my more conservative friends back home would raise issues with that, but this recollection isn't about my political opinions. It's about the 11th patient we rolled into the triage area. I noted the man's vital signs as the attendants loaded him onto a reinforced gurney. Blood pressure 120/90, breathing rate normal, heartbeat steady. I frowned and I looked the man over. No visible trauma of any kind. The attendants carried him into one of the medical tents at the edge of the hospital, away from the more critical patients, and I followed him. Dr. Butler was inside, splattered with the blood of many men. We had become fast friends since the hospital went up 2 days prior. He was from Quebec and I was from Ontario, but some things can be forgiven for the sake of friendship. "What's wrong with this guy?" he asked me, pulling out a pair of fresh gloves. I shrugged and he sighed in exasperation, bending over the elevated gurney to examine the man. The attendants left and we were alone. Dr. Butler murmured thoughtfully, holding his fingers to the man's neck. The patient remained motionless as ever, a living statue in his bed. "He looks alright, but he won't respond to any stimuli." His brow furrowed. "Let me go grab Dr. Massenot. Watch him for me." "Alright, Jax," I responded. I barely noted his leaving as I ambled closer to the patient. I had more experience as a soldier than a surgeon, but this case was curious nonetheless. I leaned in close to the man. His skin was tinned and leathery from years living in the sun, and his eyes were closed. I gasped when I saw one of those eyes twitch just a second later. I was about to yell for the doctor when more movement caught my attention. The man's mouth was twitching now as well. He appeared to be trying to say something. "Hey, can you hear me? Maraban?" I asked in a loud voice, inclining my head to hear his response better. The man's lips opened, and he spoke in a broken, croaky voice. "I am Salid Malik, and I have a gun to your belly." My heart flew out of my chest and I opened my mouth to scream, but the noise quickly died in my throat. I felt the weight of the gun barrel on my liver. Saheed would surely pull the trigger if I gave him a good reason or even a decent one. I finally found my voice, shaky though it was. "We are just medical personnel here, pal. This is a hospital." Saheed laughed weakly. I felt warm spittle hit my face, and the gun barrel never wavered. "That's good. I didn't plan on getting here the hard way, but that does not matter now." Our conversation was interrupted by the commotion of Dr. Butler returning to the tent. He walked 2 steps before registering our predicament. "At last, I found you," Saheed said in a deeply satisfied tone. I noted that the strength was returning to his voice. Dr. Butler raised his hands and he froze. "Okay." His eyes were wide. "You found me, sure." "Plain dumb, huh?" Saheed muttered. Fine. We'll see how that goes." No one moved for a long moment. The air smelled of blood and antiseptics. Finally, our captor spoke again. "My name is Saheed Malik, and I've traveled a long way to kill you." His eyes never left Butler, burning into the doctor like the heat of the sun. "You wear the skin of a man, but you are a monster underneath." Dr. Butler nodded slowly, as if he was agreeing with a small child so it would calm down. We all have our regrets, friend. I'm sure you're not without issues yourself. Just calm down. Saheed shook his head slowly. Stop it. You came into my house at night and took my wife and child from me. I heard them scream, but you took their bodies. For the first time, I stopped focusing on the gun to my belly and I started listening to the guy's messed up story. Did Butler really know this guy? What the hell was going on? Butler had moved a step closer to us. Saheed had not noticed. We can help you get better, Butler said reassuringly. Saheed pressed back against the bed, fear flashing through his eyes. I wondered what he was so afraid of. Butler wasn't the one holding the gun. If you take another step closer, I will shoot your friend. I was close to hyperventilating now. Like I said, there are no Canadians dead yet in this war, and I very much did not want to be the first. Butler looked at Saheed, and then at me, and his gaze turned cold. The man knew that I was gone in an instant. All the little creases and lines that made up his normal expression dissolving into a vacant stare. Everything human fled from his countenance, like the small waves pulling in before a tsunami hits. Shoot him. I don't care. I gasped at Butler, but he was completely ignoring me. His focus now was solely on Saheed. I could feel the gun barrel trembling against my skin. The injured soldier had lost his only leverage, and we all knew it. Butler was another foot closer to us, though I had not seen him move. The skin on his face and hands was sloughing away, falling to the ground in large pieces. All I could think of was the Pillsbury dough rolls my mother used to make, and my mind stuck in a state of primal fear. What the hell are you? I whispered, somehow afraid that if I was too loud he would get angry. This was a baseless fear. I was coming to see for anger was an emotion he could no longer feel, any more than he could have felt happiness or love. He turned his head to take us both in, a crimson tongue darting out to moisten his crumbling lips. No. I knew the only urge left in this creature was hunger. A pure and basic hunger that could never be truly satisfied. Stay back, Saheed said, his voice shaking. He pointed the gun at Butler, who was now completely devoid of skin, his entire body glistening red like an open wound. His eyelids were gone, and the eyes revealed were yellow and ravenous. I could not move, although I was now free to do so. People talk about fight or flight, but when the shit hits the fan, most of us just freeze up. I ate them. I was horrified to hear Butler speak. His voice was low and gargling, as if he was speaking underwater. There was nothing mortal left in his words. I took your wife and I took your boy, and I dissolved them in my acid until they became a thin paste, and then I ate them. Tears ran down Saheed's face and the gun trembled in his hand. Someone started saying something in a low voice, and after a terrified second, I realized that it was me. Shoot him, I said, deathly quiet and then becoming more agitated. Shoot him. Shoot him. Hell, shoot him. Butler leapt forward red and wet and screeching, and the shot rang out, and I was screaming and scrambling backwards and then falling. Everything happened in a second. Adrenaline pumped through my veins and I shot up, backing up faster than I thought humanly possible. My ears rang and I could hear nothing. Butler was crouched over Saheed on the gurney, his crimson face split apart to reveal a black probiscuits covered in fine hairs. The tube slid into Saheed's mouth and the Iraqi began shuddering on the table, his muffled screams barely audible under Butler's crushing body. It sounded like soup being sucked out of a straw. I watched in horror as the tube pulsed rhythmically, moving quickly to get its fill before anybody else could intervene. Saeed's arms spasmed in their death throes, the man giving out one last anguished cry before passing on. I could hear footsteps from outside and shouting, but my attention was locked on Butler. The proboscis receded into his face with a wet slurp, and the folds of skin folded back to become a vaguely human shape once again. Pale flesh began to cover the red, spreading quickly to hide the awfulness underneath. The tent flap was opening behind me, and then I heard another gunshot, and somebody slammed into me from behind. The ground rushed up quickly to meet me, and I lost consciousness. I woke up sitting in a chair. I felt a hand loosening my tie, and the sun shining on my face. "Are you with me, son?" Dr. Massenot's warm voice filled me with relief, but I opened my eyes to see the man watching me with concern. The whole thing must have been a dream. Maybe I had had a bout of heat stroke or I ate some bad rations. It was all over now. "I'm okay," I said, accepting the glass of water that he had offered me. "What happened?" He chuckled. "Don't tell me you've got amnesia now. You were there for most of it." A horrible sense of unease was growing in the pit of my stomach. "Just tell me what happened." Massenot leaned back, hooking his thumbs into his belt loops. "Jack has managed to wrestle the gun from the man, but a shot accidentally went off in the scramble. Went right through the bastard's eye." "What?" I felt dizzy, and my eyes were suddenly on the watch for any sort of nearby movement. "No, where's Butler?" Massenot's attention shifted to something behind me, and I could feel a new presence behind the chair. I didn't dare turn around, partially out of some basic childish belief that if you can't see the monster, then it can't see you either. "Ah, here's the hero now." Massenot smiled and he nodded to us, turning to leave. "I'll let you two speak alone." "Wait," I said weakly, but the doctor was already gone. I realized then that we were in a lesser traveled part of the hospital. A quiet, out-of-the-way place behind the tents where people went to smoke after a long shift. No one would be passing through here on a busy day like this. "Hello," Butler said, his voice directly behind me. I felt the chair tremble as he leaned into it, bringing to mind Saeed's shuddering body. I couldn't speak. We boring people often make up scenarios where we outwit the bad guy and save the day. But when the time comes, most of us just bow our heads and say, "Please no." Call me a coward or a baby if you want. That's just the simple truth of it. He moved slowly around me, his human skin unbroken and unblemished from what I could see. Butler sat down in the chair across from me, leaning forward. I kept my face pointed down. "Hey," he said, putting a finger under my chin and bringing it upwards. "Up here now, buddy." I met eyes with Butler. The man that I thought I knew had returned. His expression was all warmness and civility, soft dimples crinkling against the sides of his comforting smile. Maybe it had been a dream. Monsters aren't real after all. The heat and the constant stress of this place must have been getting to me. "So you took the gun from him, didn't ya?" I asked weakly, hoping against reason. He nodded. "Yup, that's what happened. Damn shame that it went off in the scramble though." "Damn shame." I agreed, watching him closely. "But still," he continued, "better him than you or me, right?" "Yeah." I was being ridiculous. No one can just shed their skin and put it back on like nothing happened. "Thanks a lot. You saved my life and I owe you." "No problem." He leaned forward to squeeze my shoulder. "We're all in this fight together, you know." Well, glad we sorted that out. I thanked Butler again and then I told him I would rest here for a little while before getting back to work. Sure, whatever you need. Butler turned to leave, and then he stopped and he looked back. Oh, and another thing. Yeah, what is it? Tonight, the morgue. I need somebody to stand guard. Okay, I replied. I dare not say anything else. It hadn't been a dream. Deep down I knew that all along. I could only think of my wife and child back in Ontario, and of Sahid's dead family. Good, he said. What meager conscience might have once guided my actions was completely gone. I was guided solely by self-preservation, like the bear who gnaws at his own leg rather than be caught in a trap. I volunteered for the guard shift that night, and every other night until we pulled out of that place on March 4th. Butler made his visits on the dot almost every time. We timed it so the night nurses were between rotations. I rationalized it in my mind, figuring that no one was getting hurt if Butler was just doing it to the dead people. That was another way of dealing, calling what he did it. To speak of something is to give it power, and I could not let my mind linger too long on Butler or I would lose myself. After the hospital was closed down, I came by a piece of correspondence that included daily reports from our working days. As it turns out, when Butler did go to the morgue, he went to the sick room, or the containment tent or the nursery. No Canadian soldier died at the 1st Canadian Field Hospital, but quite a few Iraqis passed away due to unexplained causes. Sudden infant death syndrome, brain aneurysms, pulmonary embolisms. We never did autopsies because we were a field hospital and patients had to move quickly. No one ever looked too closely. I tremble to think what we might have found. My wife and I are in our 50s now and my boy is in college, but the events of that fateful day have never left me. I think of Sahid every time I look in the mirror, and when I close my eyes late at night, I can only see glistening red skin. The Gulf War is long over, but the Middle East has had its share of conflict in the meantime. Hundreds of thousands have fallen, and all I can envision is Butler and others like him feeding off the corpses like buzzards in a butcher house. No Canadians died in the Gulf War, but many others have died since then. And I have come to learn that there are worse ways to go than a bullet to the head.